afternoon, Professor Mohan Sharma, Professor Krishna Sharma, Professor Amit, and I'd like to also invite Dr. Prakash Kaple, who will be talking today on clinical trials in management of severe head injury. Prakash Kaple, Dr. Prakash Kaple is Associate Professor in Nobel Medical College, Biratnagar, Nepal. He did his MBBS from China in 2007 and did MS from General Surgery from Kathmandu University, and did MCH from TUTH in 2017. After his MCH, he joined the Nobel Medical College, where he is unit chief and associate professor now. So he'll be talking on clinical trials in management of severe head injury. Thank you. Dr. Prakash, now you can start.
Thank you, Dr. Balgopal sir, for your nice introduction. It's my great pleasure to have here and talk on clinical trials in management of severe head injury, which is one of the most debated topic. So it is a common and it is most debated topics around the world. So after this presentation, please log into the menti.com so that we can claim for the CPD point. There is no conflict of interest to declare. So this is the outline of my today's talk. Background of the traumatic brain injury, history, and important trials and one guideline. And lastly, the summary. So traumatic head injury is one of the major cause of death and disability worldwide. And this fall injury in the developed countries being the commonest cause of injury worldwide. Though in the developing countries, this road traffic accident because of this urbanization has increased, still in the developed countries, fall injury accounts the highest number of frequency causing the head injuries. So what is head injury? Head injury is defined as brain damage resulting from the external forces as a consequence of impact, rapid acceleration or deceleration of penetrating object, or blast waves from an explosion. The nature, intensity, direction, and duration of these forces determine the pattern and extent of damage. So this is also a form of traumatic brain injury. Itself, traumatic brain injury and head injury are different terms. Earlier, it was termed as head injury, and later on the consensus was made whether what is difference between traumatic head injury and brain injury. And the clear guideline between the head injury and traumatic brain injury is head injury involves all the PNS and the other maxillofacial injuries. However, the traumatic brain injury includes only the skull fractures and focal or diffuse type of brain injuries. So this is also another form of head injuries where skull has been injured. So I am showing these two slides is in subsequent two slides I will show the two different types of head injury where the management differs. So she is 53 years female with fall injury under alcohol influence with GCS of OVT with left dilated pupil. This is another head injury classification. Glasgow-Coma scale is one of the most commonly and widely used tool for communication between the healthcare workers. So head injury has been classified as this mild, this minimal, mild, moderate, severe, and critical. We usually neglect this minimal and critical. In the practical term, we use mild, moderate, and severe head injury as the best means of classification. So this reviewing the history is of interest, and it is my passion because I love to review the history and don't want to repeat the same mistake in the future. There is a common saying: those who do not learn, those who cannot learn from the history are doomed to repeat it again. So this is a good, interesting paper by Omar Al, in which he has clearly mentioned about the evolution of management of head injuries, in which in the Egyptian era, the head injury is probably, it has been mentioned that head injury is probably as old as human beings. This is present in ancient myth that may dates back before recorded history. The finding of trephineted skull in the battlefield is the evidence of cranial surgery. And Edwin Smith Papyrus is the first who has been uh, designated as to describe the first treatment of head injury in the Egyptian era. So this is the picture of the Smith Papyrus. This is the skull which was found in the battlefield, the trephineted, and this skull and this fine roofing has found shows that there had been surgery of cranial, either traumatic brain injury or tumor or any kind of surgery has been done in the past, which is signified by this. And this is another skull in which there is a gold inlay cranioplasty done, and this signifies that there was surgery of the cranium done before. And this is the trepanation tool done in the ancient time. So there is a major timeline in the development of history of neurosurgery. Before the 18th century, the time was reviewing the historical aspect, what was done. And in the 18th century, they started to make a hypothesis. In 19th century, some of the hypotheses were proven either wrong or right. 1950s herald the new era of modern surgery by development of ICP monitoring. In 1970s, the traumatic head injury was declared is one of the public health problem, so the awareness campaign was begun. And in between this 1970s and 1980s, majority of this radiological investigation, this invention was made. In 1972, CT scan was done, and in 1977, the first human MRI was done. So this herald a new era in the development of neurosurgery. In 1990s, it is declared as a decade of brain, in which the development and dissemination of standardized guidelines for traumatic brain injury was made. In 20th century, the advance in the technology was made, so it achieved the new horizon. And again, coming to 21st century, this development of diffusion tensor imaging sequence in MRI further added in the management of traumatic brain injury. So this is the beginning of CT and MRI, as I talked in the previous slide. So because of the visionary peoples in the field of neurosurgery has attained a new height, what it is today. So I'll be discussing basically of these clinical trials. There are many clinical trials done in the neurosurgery, but all the trials do not come in practical life. Some get stopped in the beginning, some do not come to the proper conclusion. So it's like a marathon, this race in which many people participate, and finally the winner will be some. So there were total 191 randomized control trials were done in the field of neurosurgery regarding the management possibilities of the traumatic head injury. Out of them, only the 37 had a robust significant effect, and of these 37, only the 6 has a significant levels of recommendation. Among them, 4 had negative and 2 had positive. So of these 6, there are of the 6 trials, the albumin first trial was like albumin was superior to normal saline, and it proved that albumin was inferior in the management of head injury. Other injury was this hypothermia produced poor outcome. This urotherm injury, in which the keeping patient in hypothermic state again is has this poorer outcome. Other is role of steroid in this head injury. Again, it proved to have inferior effect. And another is large craniotomy versus small craniotomy. And it was found that large craniotomy had better result. And another is DECTA trial, in which decompressive craniectomy was prior to the medical management of ICP. And this early surgery for traumatic intracerebral hematoma, this is the modality. So these were the 6. I was talking about all these 6 trials is not possible in today's this webinar. So I will be talking about the most trials. These trials, these are the name of the famous trial, like DECTA trial, Rescue ICP trial, Rescue AS trial, Crash trial, Eurotherm, Best Trip, EPOTBI, Tech trial, Synapse trial, and Synapse ICU trial are 2 different trials. The Synapse trial, most of the centers in Nepal are part of the Synapse trial, and this STITCH trial is different that from the ICS management trial. So why we need guidelines? Because there are 2 variant of patients. We cannot generalize everything by the guidelines. So I would like to say something about this thing. This slide, 48 years right-handed female with road traffic accident presented with GCS of 6 and bilateral pupils 2 mm non-reactive. So we did a decompressive hemicraniectomy here. So another is same type of patient with GCS of 8 who presented initially with a GCS of 14 and after 3 hours deteriorated and had this bilateral dilated tooth with GCS of 9. In this case, we immediately went for planned for DSC, but after opening the this cranium, there was large hematoma and we put the bone back. So why these guidelines are important is to determine to individualize the patient. So any type of treatment protocols comes from this meta-analysis. So the these clinical guidelines are above meta-analysis. So everything can be generalized. However, this generalizing all the things by protocol has again detrimental effect. So if you follow the protocols, again this this papaya will be in this sequence. So all these guidelines should be taken as this recommendation and guidelines should be taken individually. So any surgery should be done with the interest to treat the disease, but never with the interest to treat your ego. So if you recommend one thing, it cannot be generalized. So the major trials I'm talking today is about this DECRA trial, this rescue ICP trial, and this recommendation of this Brain Trauma Foundation guidelines. So DECRA trial was this published in 2011. Where, it is a multi-center randomized control trial funded by the Medical Research Council of Australia. In which the study period was carried between from 2002 to 2010. The main aim of the study was to test the efficacy of bifrontotemporoparietal. The thing is that bifrontotemporoparietal decompressive craniectomy in adults less than 60 years of age with traumatic brain injury, in which first year intensive care and the neurosurgical therapies had not maintained ICP below the accepted limits. The study population were between the 15 to 59 years of age with severe non-penetrating type of traumatic brain injury. The exclusion criteria were like if they were not deemed suitable for the full active treatment by the clinical staff caring for the patient, and dilated underactive people with a mass lesion that doesn't require surgery, and the spinal cord injury or cardiac arrest at the scene of injury, they were all excluded. And the outcome was assessed on the basis of this extended Glasgow this outcome scale. It is an 8-point scoring system, which we all of know. So outcome measure in the initial this conceiving of the study, they have this design their primary outcome is a number of this unfavorable outcome. But with the interim meeting just before conducting the study, because this study started in the April, and then before this study was started, they again change the primary outcome. They change this outcome as a number of functional outcome. Initially, it was number of unfavorable outcome. Now they change into after this interim meeting, they change it into functional outcome. So the secondary outcomes were intracranial pressure measurement hourly, the intracranial hypertensive indexes, and the proportion of survivors with a score of 2 to 4, which is bad grading, and the number of days in ICU stay and the mortality in the hospital at 6 months. So after this, they came to the conclusion that over they compared the decompressive with the standard medical treatment, where they found that in the medical group, this medical treatment group, the mortality was 18%, and in this decompressive group, the mortality was 19%. You see at the this unfavorable score of 1 to 4 was higher in the decompressive group, 51%, this 70%, and it is 51 versus 42. And the limitation of the trial, it was one of the biased, this controversial trial, and it has a limitation. The major limitation were the medical and surgical teams were obviously aware of the study group, and although the assessors were not. And one center recruited more than one third of the this trial participants, so there was a selection bias in this, and there were imbalance in some baseline characteristics of the patient, particularly the proportion of the patient without pupil reactivity at the hospital admission. Obviously, when you have a bad grade patient, you will have a bad outcome. So the conclusion of trial was The use of craniectomy is compared with the standard care decrease the mean ICP and decrease the ventilatory and ICU stay. But it was associated with a significant worse outcome at 6 months on Glasgow outcome scale. So it has this DECRA trial has many criticism, and this is a beautiful paper by this Ryan et al. In which they have mentioned clearly 5 points of these criticisms, in which the conceiving of this trial was 15 years ago, and this trial started very late. And the surgical decompression using the bifrontal craniectomy with still a dural incision over both frontal convexity without cutting the fox and sagittal sinus is not the surgical decompression of choice in the most of the cases. They did not cut this area, this attachment, so it was not decompartmentalized. And this procedure is reversed for only a few patients with bifrontal focal intracranial pathology such as large bifrontal contusion, and when used, surgeon advocate cutting the fox and anterior sagittal sinus just above the kyphoscolioid to obtain the maximum decompressive effect. And this was not done in DECRA. And the second shortcoming of this data trial was the randomization process yielded significantly more patients with non-reactive people. As I told that if you have bad graded patient, you will have bad outcome. And the most significant flaw of the this study was failure to analyze the data using the technique that accounts the enrollment of characteristics effect on the outcome. And the enrollment took approximately 8 years in 15 participating centers, and thus only 1 to 2% of the severe head injury patients admitted to these centers were actually enrolled in the trial. So again, there was main thing is selection bias. And the presence of raised intracranial pressure more than 20 mm of AG for 10 minutes or more, in which many surgeons would not submit a patient to a decompressive craniectomy after a short period of raised intracranial pressure, which is again proven less effective in the rescue ICP trial, in which they waited the ICP to raise up to 25 mm Hg for 1 to 12 hours. So this is another trial. This by the done this randomized evaluation of surgery with craniectomy in uncontrolled elevation of intracranial pressure rescue ICP trial. Their clinical question was, what is the role of decompressive craniectomy compared to the barbiturated coma for patient with a traumatic brain injury and intracranial hypertension refractory to the medical management? So this was again the multi-center, this international parallel group superiorly randomized clinical trials involving 398 patients, in which 202 patients had surgery and 198 patients had no surgery. And there were 52 centers in 20 countries, and the clinical trial held between 2004 to 2014. And their primary outcome was GOS at 6 months after hospitalization, and the secondary outcome was GOS at 12 and 14 months, mortality at 6, 12 and 14 months, quality of life at the same time, and GOS at the discharge from the neurosciences center or hospital, and the assessment of ICP and the duration of stay in ICU and time to discharge from the neuroscience hospital and the economic evaluation. So the population of study was a bit different, because in the DECRA trial they involved this study population between 15 to 59 years of age, but in this it was a bit wider range of population, in which they involved the cases between 10 to 65 years, and traumatic brain injury with an abnormal CT brain, intracranial pressure monitoring already in place, and the raised ICP more than 25 mm Hg 1 to 2 hours despite intensive care management. The patient who had undergone an immediate operation for evacuation of an ICH could be included as long as the operation was not a craniectomy. And trial site were a hospital that provide acute neurosciences care for the patient with severe TBI, and that happens for our neurosurgical facilities. And this their exclusion criteria were bilateral fixed dilated pupils with associated bleeding disorders and injury that has deemed to be unsurvivable, like life-threatening other associated injuries. So this was this management, tiers in their trial in the rescue ICP, in which here they don't allow this barbiturated coma is still stage 2, they allow it only in the stage 3. The barbiturated coma was allowed in the stage 3. This was the pure medical group, and this was the surgical group. And the surgical treatment was large unilateral frontotemporal craniectomy and this was done for patient with unilateral hemispheric swelling, and the bifrontal this craniectomy was recommended for patient with diffuse brain swelling affecting both hemisphere on imaging studies, like as shown in this picture. And the exact type of craniectomy was left to the discretion of the surgeon. It is the surgeon's decision what he or she thinks. So 92.6% of the patient underwent decompressive craniectomy in this group, and the median time for randomization to craniectomy was 2.2 hours. So the primary outcome, this Glasgow outcome at 6 months, and the total death rate was 26%, vegetative rate was 8.5%, lower severe disability rate was 21.9%, and upper severe disability rate was 15.4%. Moderate severity rate was disability rate was 23.4%. Good recovery was 4%, and favorable outcome at 6 months was seen in 42%. This is the result of this DECRA trial, in which this upper good recovery was seen in 3%. And the secondary outcome was this same like Glasgow outcome is at 12 months, in which death rate was 30%, vegetative state was 6.1%, and the lower severe disability was 18%, upper severe disability rate was 13.4%, and this moderate 22, good recovery 9.8. And the favorable outcome at 12 months was like 45.4%, and the mean time to discharge among the survival was 15 days. So this is again the DECRA trial, in which this upper good recovery was again 4%. And the major points were the role of decompressive craniectomy in patients with post-traumatic ICH, and hypertension that is refractory to medical treatment alone remains unclear. The patient in surgical group received decompressive craniectomy plus continued medical care. Patient in the medical group received medical care alone, including barbiturated coma. So the primary outcome measure with GOS was at 6 months, surgical group had less number of deaths. This is the conclusion. Less number of deaths, around 26.9% versus 48.9%. In the DECRA trial, this death rate in the surgical group was 19%, and in the medical group it was 18%. So you see the difference between this study and that study, the DECRA. More patient in the vegetative state, 8.5% versus 2.1%. Like vegetative state was more in case of the surgical group, and dependence on the other for care was 28%, and similar rates of moderate disability and good recovery was achieved. So this rescue ICP trial, this good recovery, though the vegetative state was there, the good favorable outcome was more in case of this in this rescue ICP trial. So the limitation of the study was it was non-blinded nature of the study, and the trial studied surgical decompression among patients with medically refractory ICP, and thus its results should not be extrapolated to patients undergoing primary surgical decompression. So it was again, it has some criticism like recruitment was slow, taking over 10 years, and half of the centers recruited very few patients, and this therapeutic hypothermia may have a detrimental on neurological outcome after traumatic brain injury cases. And the study was commenced before Eurothon, this European study of therapeutic hypothermia. So effect of this, it has already, this Eurothon study already proved that keeping patient in hypothermia is detrimental. So this was a part of this flaws of the study, and the clinical team who cared for the patient were aware of the trial group assigning this assignment, although this was mitigated by outcome adjustment. And the large proportion of the patients in the medical group underwent DC, and this situation may have diluted the observed treatment effect. So another, this I would like to put only one slide on this CRASH-3 trial, which has result came in 2019. Many centers from Nepal also took part in this CRASH-3 trial, and which proved that giving tranexamic acid in a head injury patient with GCS of low or equal to 12. I mean, moderate and severe head injury cases, they had seen the favorable outcome, decreasing mortality, and finally they came to conclusion that giving the tranexamic acid is safe in patient with TBI, and that treatment within 3 hours of injury reduced head injury related death. Initially, they planned for giving this tranexamic acid within 8 hours of injury, but later on they came to conclusion that giving tranexamic acid within 3 hours has better outcome. So this was another trial, and now all these guidelines comes from the multiple trials. So I would like to briefly go about this Brain Trauma Foundation latest guideline, 4th edition guideline. According to this, this guideline has divided the recommendation into 3 levels: level 1, level 2, level 2B, and 3. And there were 198 publications included in this Brain Trauma Foundation guideline, in which there were 5 studies with class 1 evidence, 46 studies with the class 2 evidence, 136 with the class 3 evidence, and there were 2 meta-analyses. And with those publications, they have made 28 recommendations on 18 topics. So all these guidelines is on the top of this chart, this pyramidal pyramid. So this is this recommendation is considered as gold standard, but it is not replacement to the individuals these cases. So decompressive craniectomy, this Brain Trauma Foundation, what it has clearly mentioned is bifrontal decompressive craniectomy with adequate size of 12 by 15 centimeter is recommended over a small frontotemporal parietal DAC to reduce mortality and improve the neurological outcome in patients with severe TBI when ICP is more than 20. The thing is that this Brain Trauma Foundation guideline was published before the before the result of rescue ICP trial. So this ICP criteria of more than 20 is not valid. So they have recommended the ICP to be 22. And the is proved by this youth home study that prophylactic hypothermia either early or short term is not recommended to improve the outcome in patient with diffuse injury. And again, in the last week's webinar, Professor Amit sir has talked about this hyperosmolar therapy, and they have mentioned that this only mannitol is effective for control of raised ICP at a dose of 0.25 to 1 gram per kg body weight, and this restrict mannitol use prior to ICP monitoring to patient with sign of transtentorial herniation. It is used to buy the time. And this cerebral spinal fluid drainage, in this they have recommended that instead of draining the CSF in intermittent basis, it is better to drain the CSF continuously. And the Professor Essergill, what he had mentioned is that by draining the CSF fluid, 7 ml of draining CSF, draining of 7 ml CSF is equivalent to the effect of one pint of this mannitol, means 20 gram, 100 ml of 20% mannitol. So in his study, he had told that 7 ml of draining CSF is equivalent to giving the mannitol 20 gram of mannitol. So in this recommendation, it has been clearly shown that instead of this draining the CSF intermittently, it is better to drain in a continuous fashion. But there is again a issue of nowadays the issue of intracranial hypotension is bonding, so it has to be taken clearly with judgment. So ventilation therapies, prolonged prophylactic hyperventilation with PCO2 of less than 25 is not recommended because it induces the ischemic changes. So the targeted between 30 to 35. And anesthetic, analgesic, and sedatives, like they do not recommend high dose of barbiturates with the aim or with the target to suppress the burst suppression is easy. However, they recommend the high dose of barbiturate to control the elevated ICP refractory to the maximum standard of medical and surgical treatment. And steroid, in this Brain Trauma Foundation guideline, level of evidence with the highest level of evidence is steroid. They have found that there is no role of steroids in the head injury management. And nutrition, they recommend that replacement of this nutrition by third day and reaching to the basal caloric replacement at the fifth day and almost by the seventh day is recommended. And infection prophylaxis, they have clearly mentioned about the protocol-based this oral care. This CLAG index, oral care is not recommended to reduce the ventilator-associated pneumonia and may cause an increased risk of acute respiratory distress syndrome. And they have recommended the early tracheostomy to reduce the mechanical ventilation days, and when the overall benefit is thought to outweigh the complication associated such as procedure. However, there is no evidence that early tracheostomy reduces the mortality or rate of the nosocomial infection. It is done not to reduce the mortality, but to reduce the length of ICU stay. So the what is the role of this DVT prophylaxis? This LMWX or low molecular unfractionated heparin may be used in combination with the mechanical prophylaxis. However, there is an increased risk of expansion of intracranial hemorrhage. Again, it should be used with judicious precaution. So seizure prophylaxis, and they have clearly told that prophylaxis use of phenytoin or valproate is not recommended for preventing late seizure. It acts on the only this immediate seizure. Whenever there is this seizure, either in the early or late phase, it has to be treated as epilepsy. And which is the drug of choice? Again, this phenytoin is recognized to decrease the incidence of early post-traumatic seizure. However, there are many other studies concerning this levetiracetam, but at present time, there is insufficient evidence to recommend levetiracetam compared with phenytoin regarding efficacy in preventing early post-traumatic seizure and its toxicity. Regarding the monitoring of ICP, this management of severe TBI patient using information from ICP is recommended to reduce the in-hospital and 2-week post-hospital post-injury mortality. And they have mentioned to monitor ICP in patient with GCS of 3 or less and other with this abnormal CT scan finding. And in addition to this, they have recommended to monitor ICP in a patient with age more than 40 years, unilateral or bilateral motor posturing, and having blood pressure of less than 90 mm of Hg. And see what is the target of CPP monitor? CPP should be kept in between 60 to 70. And the advanced cerebral monitoring to monitor the cerebral perfusion oxygen by this jugular venous pressure. And the blood pressure, what is the targeted blood pressure? This maintaining the blood pressure at more than 100 mm of Hg in patient age group between 50 to 69, and those who are or above the patient like 15 to 49 years means they are asked to keep the blood pressure a bit higher. So the SBP should be more than 100 because one episode of this hypertension will double the mortality. So always they have asked to keep at least SBP of more than 100. So this intracranial pressure threshold in this rescue ICP, as in the rescue ICP, they are like it had not recommended. In this brain trauma foundation, it has come to 22, and this rescue ICP they have mentioned 25, and DECRA 20. So they have come to the this. Brain Trauma Foundation guideline was published before the result of the rescue ICP, so we can go up to 25. And the CPP of 60 to 70. And this again, oxygen, this cerebral oxygen saturation to be measured on the venous, jugular venous saturation. So, where is the Nepal? I have quoted some this study done in Nepal. This is the study which I did years back. It was published in the Journal of this Virat Medical College years back. In this study, like road traffic accident was the most common cause of traumatic brain injury in our part also, and the overall mortality rate was 11% during the hospital stay, and unfavorable Glasgow outcome scale at discharge was 43.5% in my series. So this is I have quoted other studies from the Nepal. This is the management of pediatric head injury in remote Nepal. It was published way back in 2012. And this is another study by this in the Manipal group 2 years back. Like in 90 before there was many neurosurgeons in Nepal, so it was conducted between 1999 to 2003. And there are other studies by Balgopal Rai regarding the pediatric head injuries. And this is another study conducted by Erik, the Swedish the Swedish doctor who was there in TUTS in 2017, and he had beautifully conducted these studies. And there are all lots of studies. Sorry, I could not mention them all here. So these are the studies on traumatic head injury from Nepal, and there are many more. I couldn't involve all of them. So what is the new horizon in the management of traumatic brain injury? None of the study proved very superior to other. So now it is time to think for the highest level of management. So I think the visionary people in and out will find some way out. So the take-home message is management of TBI is improving over the years, and the evidence developed have not gained global consensus because of biasness in the study, and the treatment should not be generalized, and the protocols and guidelines are not to substitute for good clinical observation. The controversies exist, hence healthy discussion and consensus is warranted. So thank you for your time. So coming here, I would like to in the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Prakash Kasle. It was very illustrative, very nicely presented. I mean, and the details of Brain Trauma Foundation guidelines and DECRA and Rescue and others and local trials. Nicely, very nice. I don't see any questions from the participants. If anyone can ask the question to Dr. Prakash Kasle now. Yeah, Dr. Gopal Serai.
Hello.
Okay, someone has hypothermia practices in Nepal. Yeah, I don't know what I meant, but I remember the time about 15 years ago, we, Dr. Devkota, used to use hypothermia in few cases. But now for more than a decade and a half, we are not doing any hypothermia. Any other has any comment? Mohan sir, Dr. Krishna sir?
Yes. Yeah, hypothermia is no longer practiced. Actually, the major IHAS trial for aneurysm, it was extrapolated from that trial. Those patients who had hypothermia, actually mortality was higher compared to those who had normothermia, and that data was extrapolated to head injury. So hypothermia is not, though hyperthermia is an independent adverse prognostic factor, doing hypothermia is not good. Rajiv, this is it.
Yeah. Any more questions? Any suggestions?
Dr. Rajiv, please see the chat box.
Questions on the chat
Can I say something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Prakash, excellent presentation, good summary. Actually, there are not many high-quality trial in head injury, though based on that paper by Michael Devon, 40% of a neurosurgeon's life is spent taking care of trauma patient, head injury patient, but unfortunately not many high-quality trial. the major one you described very beautifully. Still some controversy going on. A couple of things I'd like to add. In terms of grading of the head injury, they have added mild, complicated in the grading of mild, moderate, severe. If the patient has clinically GCS fitting but has a fracture, it's called mild complicated. That's the one new thing I'd like to add. And about the, next thing is neurosurgery is arguably the oldest profession, because in the, in the agriculture age, in Neolithic age, the only way to kill your enemy is by striking the person's head, and there must have been some treatment modalities done that time also. Our real old ancestors must have had the way of treating them before this, all this trepanation, all these things. So, hello. So apart from that, I think there are many paper also from Colombia. Rubiano has done paper consensus statement. I have also come. Many low and middle income countries, or more than 70 countries in the world, do not have ICP monitoring facility. So they have also done many trials to how to manage patients when their ICP is not. My suggestion to you in future is to include those paper also, because we in Nepal also many centers do not have the capability to monitor the ICP, and still the outcome is comparable.
Yes, sir. It was like
That's
done
a
in
small
African
thing I wanted to add. Excellent presentation, excellent.
Africa and Latin America also.
It was done in those countries and all developing countries. While the developed countries who were doing ICP monitoring, they thought that it should not be done. But their result was like this protocol-based study that monitoring ICP. It was good, sir.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your very valuable comments.
Rajiv, can I speak?
Sure.
Yeah, Prakash, it was an excellent one. Like you were reminding me of a very upcoming, very good clinician and academician. As I was listening to you, it was a very good presentation. And all I can say is that every one of us are managing head injuries in our own way. But these guidelines help us to guide in difficult situations, though we must have by now adopted our own way of managing these injuries according to the circumstances, how we manage the emergency, who is available in the emergency to manage your cases if you are not there. So there are many other factors, even social factors that come into play when you manage a head injury. But following these guidelines help to build up your confidence. And nowadays, I think more importantly would be also a medical legal problem, because when you manage a patient of head injury and you don't succeed, and there must be a lot of allegations and finger pointing at you. You should have done that, this, that, and that. I think if you had followed a protocol that has been described by all these foundations, there are a lot of times you are saved, and probably it will be easier for us to also to help those in troubles and ourselves. So I think this also is a very, very important part, the medical legal aspect, to follow these guidance. Besides, of course, going along with the tide of the world is, of course, the thing. Thank you. Thank you, Prakash. That was excellent one.
Okay, sir. Dr. Risa has asked a question. So she's asking, we still give dexamethasone along with mannitol in severe TBI. We still think it is beneficial. What do you say? I asked this question to Mohan Sharma, sir.
Unfortunately, not so, Resa. We do respect to you. I think there are all things being equal. Mortality in patients who received dexamethasone was higher compared to those patients who did not receive dexamethasone or any other form of steroid. the reason they died was due to hospital-acquired pneumonia. It's a very strong immunosuppression, and these patients are very susceptible. Now actually conducting a study randomized trial using corticosteroid versus not ethical. It being harmful. That's my opinion, and at teaching hospital, we do not use it at all. Maybe we'd like to hear other centers' opinion also. Krishna sir, Amit, Rajiv.
Yes, yeah, I have a comment. Dr. Devkota's protocol, and that was followed by many of us, was to use steroids in subacute stage. Like after 4 or 5 days, we used to start steroids and taper it off over 2 weeks, I would say. I'm sure a lot of those neurosurgeons who were trained in that particular way must be using in subacute stage, so-called. Are there any trials doing that, Dr. Mohan, please?
Right now, nobody is doing, because in the early part of this century, actually 2000, there were trial. Last trial was in 2004, and they did on actually progesterone in head injury trial, close to steroid. Before that, more patient, the patient in the corticosteroid arms had higher mortality. So now nobody is now doing this trial. Currently, there is no on trial undergoing regarding the role of steroid.
What is your practice, Dr. Balgopal, Dr. Rajiv, regarding steroid in subacute stage of head injury?
Okay, sir. I still use sometimes in patients like with borderline contusion, for example, in dominant hemisphere, in left-sided dominant hemisphere, like frontotemporal contusions, with patient might be having like severe headache or something like that, and we usually rapidly taper over next 3-4 days. Sometimes we use this.
Okay. Because the reason is, it is a cytotoxic edema in head injury. It's not a vasogenic edema. So from basic science perspective also, it will not work. That's the philosophy. But in medical science, nothing is 100% as always.
Okay, there is another question from Dr. Nikunj about like any opinion on cysternostomy, a rather controversial but a topic which has been kept burning from few centers within the country and abroad. What do everyone think about it? I myself have no idea about it. It was started by one of my boss. What is Nepali Society's take on it? Yes. So, Krishna sir.
I've never practiced that particular way of managing. I think we should hear from those who are practicing. Actually, probably you, Dr. Prakash, who have been worked under Dr. Cherian, should have some experience and comments. Please.
Yeah, Dr. Prakash. Yeah, I think.
Like doing cystostomy is like we are a student of science. We should have some proof for this, and it has to come. If you want to generalize anything, it has to come from the randomized control trial. Until and unless we do this RCTs, we cannot claim it as a good. But doing cystostomy is better. Like what is better? It reduces transient decrease in the ICP. But again, there is matter of intracranial hypotension is a big topic. Draining all the CSF from this brain skull base, buoyancy is lost, and all continuous drainage, again the putting the drain continuous to the this cisternal or skull base induces the chance of infection. And there was one study conducted by Professor Amit Thaba in which there was no any functional outcome difference. So it is a personal experience. It has not come to up to that level. If you want to make some this standard things, it has to come through RCTs. Because in regular cases also, when like if you like when everyone is doing other skull-based surgeries, all the surgeons they drain the CSF either by optico-carotid triangles or through the oculomotor, optic carotid oculomotor. The reducing CSF definitely do reduce the ICP, and it makes this brain swelling less, but it cannot be generalized, I think.
Okay, there is a comment. Sorry, sir, Krishna sir.
Yeah,
You were
Prakash,
telling
you did
something.
not mention on hypotonic saline in any of these guidelines. Do you have any comment on that?
Like Brain Trauma Foundation has not mentioned about the hypertonic saline, sir. It has mentioned only about mannitol.
Okay.
May I speak,
So
sir?
there is yeah.
So
Yeah,
regarding
okay,
the
Professor
hypertonic
Amit.
saline, yeah, thank you. Well, the Brain Trauma Foundation guideline was updated 2 years back from now, and
Yeah,
till then there are a
yeah.
lot of meta-analysis and systematic review on hypertonic saline which has come. Maybe in the future, Brain Trauma Foundation guidelines this will appear. But if you see the Brain Trauma Foundation guidelines of pediatric severe head injuries, then they have definitely recommended hypertonic saline over mannitol. So Brain Trauma Foundation pediatric group have already prescribed that. As the adult treatment group, which has not yet recommended. Maybe the new recommendation will come in this year or so. Regarding the cisternostomy, well, the terminology cisternostomy is not the right one because stotomy means you are just opening it. What we are actually doing is a cisternal drainage. So we are putting a catheter inside it and leaving it to drain for at least for 5 days. Well, I did a trial in which a center in which I was doing only cisternal drainage, and it's a place where the decompressive splenectomy alone was done. Even though the mortality was far better, survival was far better in the patient who had undergone decompressive splenectomy plus cisternal drainage, there was no such functional outcome benefit. So my conclusion had been that even though mortality can be avoided, but the functional outcome remains almost the same in both the groups. But then cisternal drainage only as a treatment of choice for severe traumatic brain injury, I don't see a role, personally speaking, because even after adding it to the decompressive splenectomy, if I'm not getting a functional betterment, then it's something which should not be prescribed as a one therapy. Regarding the use of dexamethasone, as the recent trials have already dated, and the Prakash has already put up that there's a level 1 evidence to not use dexamethasone. This is the only level 1 evidence in all the traumatic brain injury study which we have found till date. And it has shown beyond any doubt that it does not give any benefit, rather increases the complication in the patients with traumatic brain injury. And regarding the hypothermia, the problem with the hypothermia is the thawing. If somebody comes up with a protocol of how to thaw the patient after putting him into hypothermia, maybe this will work. The whole issue is about how to make the patient bring back to the normal temperature. Putting the patient into hypothermia may not be a problem, but getting him out of the hypothermia at what particular rate, how many duration, this is still $1 million question, and people are researching over it. People have found that it may have some role in pediatric traumatic brain injury, but in adult traumatic brain injury, still the evidences are not so conclusive enough. Over to you, Dr. Bhalgopal.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Yum has asked a question or comment like a discussion on role of repeat CT scan head in head injury management. What are we doing?
Prakash, would you like to add on this, please?
In our center, what we do is, sir, like if patient is, in case of severe head injury, we do not repeat the CT scan immediately. We repeat on the next coming morning. It may be like 12 hours to 24 hours, but we do it within 24 hours. First CT, and then according to the patient GCS or condition. If the patient with a non-dilated pupil or initially dilated, later recovered and becomes dilated, then we go according to that. Otherwise, regular practices, we repeat the CT scan after in the coming morning, sir.
Okay, there was another comment from Dr. Nikun. Any adverse events due to cisternal drainage, like infections? Any increase in infections in cisternal drainage?
What I have seen in cisternostomy cases is the number or frequency of post-traumatic hydrocephalus is more as compared to DSC cases, and not about this infection. Infection we have not analyzed, frankly speaking. So what I have seen in follow-up cases of cisternostomy is that we have seen more frequent number of post-traumatic hydrocephalus.
Well, just to add on that, what my experience had been is, and also looking at other patients who have been referred after cisternostomy procedure, patients sustain lots of temporal as well as frontal retraction injuries following this procedure. So it is highly recommended that if somebody is embarking on this particular type of procedure, then one should open up the Sylvian fissure. Try not to touch the temporal lobe at all, and be very gentle on retraction of the frontal lobe. So one has to go a craniotomy over the frontal bone itself. So we have to go till the frontal base. So the frontal extent of the decompensating craniotomy has to be extended over the orbit, so that they can actually go flush with the frontal lobe, and then with gentle retraction and by opening the Sylvian fissure, one can easily open the cistern, which Dr. Prakash has also mentioned, opticocarotid cistern can be opened. So that's one thing. Other than that, infection as such has not been seen to increase.
Yeah, opening of this Sylvian fissure is more, this Sylvian dissection is most, because without doing this, there is a high chance of this other vascular injury.
Yeah, true.
Okay, then is there any comments, questions to the speaker?
Balgopal, can I say something on CT scan, repeat CT scan?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Dr. Yam, very pertinent question he raised. Centers, they want to push more. There are some study. The confusion arises when you have decided to manage a case which could be operated or which could be managed conservatively. So when to repeat the CT scan? That's what the question. If it is a minor, 1 centimeter contusion, probably the indication may not be that. The hematoma, expansion of the hematoma expand within power. That was from other studies. So if you want to repeat a CT scan, you repeat within 24. And by that time, if there is no expansion of the hematoma, the chances that the hematoma will expand further and probably require surgery will be less than 5%. So generally, you admit a patient, and if the patient is doing well, GCS truly 15, probably there is no need to do another CT scan because radiation and money. But if there is a borderline epidural or borderline subdural, acute subdural, so before sending the patient home in 24 hours, it will be recommended, as Professor Krishna Sharma also said, we have to look from the patients, lawyers, and the journalist angle also. So we have to make sure we get a repeat CT scan and document in our note that there is no increase in the size of the hematoma or it is decreasing. That's been my practice. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Any questions, comments from the other participants? Yes.
Hello.
Hello. Please.
Hello. Dr. Prakash, it was a nice presentation, right? As we all know that, Viratnagar is one of the biggest hubs for trauma. And I think 60 to 70% of cases which we are doing is from all of us in Viratnagar, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was a very nice presentation. Like the latest, the topic which Dr. Mohan has said, which I had also asked, repeat scan, study from BA Hospital, regarding the role of repeat scan. And the conclusion was that, unless the patient deteriorates clinically, then there is no role for repeat scan in mild moderate TB. That was the conclusion which we had done. But practically, as Dr. Mohan was saying, it's very difficult because there are so many other factors we have to take into consideration. And like you rightly said, Dr. Prakash, we usually do after 12 hours or 24 hours. But unless the patient deteriorates, then of course you have to do it. And regarding cystoscopy, I'd like to just give my few input. I was very skeptical about it. In fact, I never did, for the initial 8 years, I never did any cystoscopy. But for the last 1.5 to 2 years, I sometimes, in traumatic cases, I open the cistern and drain some CSF because it has got a profound effect in relaxing the brain. Like when the brain is so swollen, and if you have got that narrow corridor, if you can go and open the cistern and drain some CSF, In many cases, the brain relaxes a lot, which eases you to help you to do rest of your surgery. Plus, it eases of venous congestion and the venous bleeding. As we all know, that venous bleeding is a major problem for anyone doing a severe TBI. So that's my experience. So what I do is, like, if the brain is very swollen and need be, in some cases, I just open, release the CSF, and once the brain relaxes, then there's nothing much you can think of. Many times I do also drain it, but usually for 3 to 5 days, and usually I'll keep at +5 or 10 level, +5 or 10 centimeter, so that there is no over drainage, and there has been no infection till yet, in my center. And regarding steroids, of course, literature, everyone says is detrimental and all, but as previously it was discussed, for the late cases with edema, I tend to use it sometimes, like preferably I use 3%, but sometimes I use dexamethasone, and till now, of course, there hasn't been any problem as such. But of course, everyone is against dexamethasone, but in such cases, I think it definitely helps. So that's some of my, and thank you.
Thank you, Hyundai.
Thank you, everybody. A good presentation, moderator, panelist, organizer, Prakash. I have मलाई एउटा काम पर्यो, म निस्किनु पर्यो है. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohan sir.
Thank you very much. I think it was a good presentation. I think we can conclude Balgopal now.
Yes, thank you, Mohan sir, Krishna sir, Professor Amit, Hyundai, and all the participants for participating in this regular nation webinar. So thank you, Amit. So we end up today's program. Dr. Amit.
Yeah, so can I request Dr. Prakash Kafle, thank you very much, and please stop your sharing the screen so that we can proceed to the post-test now. So this post-test, as usual, will have 4 MCQs and followed by 2 feedback questions. And okay.
Sharing Bandhavar.
Yeah. So I request everybody to please take a snap of the QR code so that you are directly led to the questionnaire. So if everybody is ready, then I can start this question, or you can type www.menti.com and enter this code, which is printed onto the screen. So here I start. So the first question. Which is the standard size for decompressive hemiectomy? You have to touch a single breast answer. So the right answer is 12 by 15 centimeter. We now move to the next question. Which of the following holds the highest level of evidence in severe traumatic brain management? The options are DVT prophylaxis, antiepileptics, steroids, or prophylactic hypothermia. Please touch a single best answer. So it is not the use of the antiepileptics. It is not to use the steroid, which has the highest level of evidence till date about in the literature published for severe TBI management. So mortality rate in decompressive hemicraniectomy group in DECRA trial was 18%, 19%, 29%, and 46%. So the right answer is 19%. This is in the decompressive hemicraniectomy group. And the last MCQ question here. When was the DECRA trial done? So we have to mention the period in which it was conducted. 1990 to 1999, 2002 to 2008, 2002 to 2010, and 2004 to 2010. Okay, so most of us have got it right, 2002 to 2010. So that concludes the MCQs. Now there are two questions for the feedback. What do you think the present webinar helped you with? So type, you can choose as many options as possible, and then you have to press submit. Okay, and the last question for the feedback. Do you recommend this presentation to your peers? Thank you, everybody. This time, many people have responded as compared to the last session. And let me take this opportunity to invite you to the next webinar next Saturday at the same time. And it will be Professor Mohan Sharma who will be talking on communication skills. It is one of the mandatory